The Apache chief invited the rancher into his tribe. After he saved his daughter's life, the land stretched wide and quiet under the open sky, where the mornings were slow and the evenings carried long shadows. This was a place where people learned to listen to the wind, to the hooves of cattle, and to the silence that spoke louder than words. On one side of this land lived a rancher, a man shaped by hard work and long days. On the other side lived the Apache tribe, rooted deeply in tradition, family, and respect for the earth. Though they shared the same sun and soil, their lives rarely crossed. The rancher lived alone in a small wooden house near his ranch. His days began before sunrise. He fed the cattle, repaired fences, and checked the water lines. Life had taught him discipline and patience. He did not talk much, but when he did, his words were calm and honest. He respected the land because it fed him, and he believed that every living thing had a place and purpose. He knew the land well, every hill, every dry creek, every hidden trail. He also knew where his land ended and where Apache land began. He never crossed that invisible line unless necessary, not because he feared the tribe, but because he respected boundaries. He had grown up hearing stories, some true, some exaggerated, about tension between ranchers and native tribes. Over time, he learned that silence and respect were better than curiosity or pride. Across the land, the Apache tribe lived close to nature. Their homes stood together, filled with voices, laughter, and shared responsibility. At the center of the tribe was the chief, a man known for his wisdom and calm strength. He had led his people for many years, guiding them through change while holding firmly to their traditions. To him, leadership was not about power but about care, especially for the young and the elders. The chief's daughter was the light of his life. She was curious and brave, always asking questions and eager to learn. She loved to run through open fields and follow the elders as they told stories of the past. The tribe watched her grow with pride, knowing she carried the future of their people in her spirit. Though the rancher and the tribe lived close, their paths rarely crossed. Sometimes the rancher would see Apache riders in the distance, moving quietly like shadows across the land. Sometimes the tribe would spot the rancher fixing a fence or guiding his cattle. They acknowledged each other with distance, neither friendly nor hostile, just careful. There was an unspoken understanding shaped by history. The land had seen conflict long before either the rancher or the chief was born. Time had softened wounds, but memories remained. Both sides knew peace existed because people chose it daily, not because problems had disappeared. Life continued this way for years, steady and predictable. The rancher believed this was how it would always be. He had no reason to think otherwise. His world was small but meaningful: work, land, and quiet nights under the stars. He did not imagine that a single moment would soon pull him into a story larger than himself. One afternoon, the sky shifted unexpectedly. Clouds rolled in faster than usual, bringing strong winds and a sudden drop in temperature. The rancher noticed the change while repairing a fence near the edge of his land. He worked quickly, knowing storms here could be harsh and unforgiving. As he finished, he heard something unusual, an echo carried by the wind. At first he thought it was an animal, then he heard it again. A faint cry. It was distant but unmistakable. The sound was weak, almost lost in the wind. The rancher stood still, listening carefully. He had learned long ago that ignoring the land's warnings could cost a life. The sound came again, closer this time. Without thinking too much, he followed it, moving beyond his usual path, closer to the rocky area where the land grew rougher. He found signs that someone had been there, footprints pressed into the dirt, small and hurried. His heart tightened. Whoever it was, they were alone, and they were in trouble. Unbeknownst to him, earlier that day, the chief's daughter had wandered farther than she ever had before. Curious and confident, she followed a trail she believed she knew. But the weather changed quickly, and the land became confusing. One wrong step led to a fall down a rocky slope. She was injured and unable to stand. The cold and fear set in fast. As time passed, her strength faded. She tried to call out, but her voice was weak. Each cry felt like her last chance to be heard. When the rancher finally saw her lying still near the rocks, he froze for a moment. He recognized her immediately, not by name but by who she was, Apache, a child, injured and alone. In that instant, all thoughts of boundaries, history, and fear disappeared. What remained was a simple truth. A child needed help. He moved carefully, speaking softly so he wouldn't frighten her. He checked her injuries as best as he could, keeping calm even though the situation was serious. He used his jacket to keep her warm and reassured her with steady words, even though he did not know if she understood him fully. The storm grew closer. Time was against them. As he worked, the rancher knew that whatever happened next would change things. Saving her might bring questions, it might bring anger, or it might bring something else entirely. But in that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was keeping her alive. And as the wind howled across the land, two worlds that had stood apart for so long began to move toward each other, without knowing it yet. The rancher knew he could not stay where he was for long. The wind was getting stronger, and the temperature was dropping fast. The girl's breathing was shallow and her face was pale. He had seen injuries before, broken bones, deep cuts and shock, and he knew the signs. If he did not act quickly, the situation could become far worse. He gently lifted her, careful not to cause more pain. She winced softly, her eyes opening for a moment before closing again. He spoke to her in a calm, steady voice, even though he was not sure she understood every word. His tone was meant to comfort, to tell her she was not alone anymore. He wrapped her more tightly in his jacket and checked her hands and feet to keep them warm. The path back to his ranch was not easy. The ground was uneven, and the wind pushed against him with force. Each step required focus and strength. His arms began to ache, but he did not slow down. In his mind, he kept repeating one thought, just a little farther. As he walked, memories surfaced, lessons learned from years of living on the land. He remembered neighbors helping each other during storms, strangers stopping to lend a hand on long roads, and moments when kindness mattered more than fear. Those memories pushed him forward. At the ranch house, he laid the girl gently on his bed. He lit the fireplace and warmed water. He cleaned her wounds as carefully as he could and used cloth to support her injured leg. He did not have advanced medical tools, but he used what he had with care and patience. He kept checking her breathing, watching for signs of improvement. Hours passed slowly. The storm raged outside, rattling the windows and howling through the night. Inside, the rancher stayed awake, sitting near the bed, listening to every breath the girl took. He knew she needed more help than he could give alone. At first light, when the storm weakened, he made a decision. He would take her back to her people. He loaded his truck carefully, making sure she was secure and warm. The drive toward the Apache land felt longer than ever. His hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind raced. He wondered how the tribe would react when they saw him. He wondered if they would understand his intentions or question them. As he approached the edge of the tribal land, he slowed down. He stopped the truck, stepped out, and waited. He did not want to cross any line without permission. Soon, riders appeared in the distance, moving fast. The rancher raised his hands to show he meant no harm. When the Apache men reached him, their expressions were tense but focused. They saw the girl in the truck and rushed to her side. Words were exchanged quickly, full of concern and urgency. Though the rancher did not understand their language, he understood their fear. They carried the girl away carefully, moving with practiced skill. Before leaving, one of the men turned back and looked at the rancher. His eyes held something unexpected, not anger, not suspicion, but gratitude mixed with caution. The rancher watched them go, standing alone on the edge of the land. The sun rose fully now, casting light across the wide plains. He felt exhausted, unsure of what would come next. Back at his ranch, life felt strangely quiet. He returned to his routines, feeding the cattle, checking the fences, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the girl and her family. He hoped she would recover. He hoped his actions would be understood. Later that day, riders returned. This time they came slowly. At their center was the Apache chief. The rancher stepped forward, his heart beating steadily. He stood straight, respectful, ready to speak if asked. The chief dismounted and approached him. His face was calm but serious, marked by years of leadership and responsibility. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The wind moved gently through the grass and the land seemed to hold its breath. Then the chief spoke, his voice firm but controlled. Though the rancher did not understand every word, he understood the meaning. The chief's daughter was alive. She was receiving care, and the chief wanted to hear the rancher's story. The rancher spoke simply. He explained what he heard, what he saw, and what he did. He did not add drama or seek praise. He told the truth just as it happened. The chief listened without interruption. His eyes never left the rancher's face. When the story ended, the chief nodded slowly. What followed would shape everything that came after. And the rancher realized that the hardest part of his journey was not the storm, the injuries, or the fear, but standing between two worlds, waiting to see if trust would be given or denied. The chief did not speak right away after hearing the rancher's words. He stood still, his face calm, but his eyes were deep with thought. Around them, several members of the tribe watched quietly. No one interrupted. This was not a moment for quick judgment. It was a moment that required care. The rancher waited patiently. He did not try to explain more or defend himself. He knew that in situations like this, silence often spoke louder than extra words. His hands rested at his sides, open and relaxed, showing respect. He kept his eyes lowered slightly, not out of fear, but out of courtesy. Finally, the chief turned and spoke to his people. His voice was steady and carried authority, but there was also emotion in it. The tribe listened closely. Some nodded. Others looked toward the rancher with curiosity. A few still held uncertainty in their expressions. The land had taught them to be careful with trust. The chief then gestured for the rancher to follow. Together, they walked toward the tribal grounds. The rancher hesitated for a brief moment, then followed without protest. He knew this step mattered. Every footstep felt heavy, as if history itself was watching. As they entered the community area, life continued quietly around them. Children paused their play. Elders looked up from their conversations. Women stopped their work and watched. Word had already spread about what happened, but seeing the rancher there made it real. The rancher felt many eyes on him. He reminded himself to breathe slowly and remain calm. He was not there to demand anything. He was there because a child's life had crossed his path, and now the consequences, good or bad, were unfolding. The chief led him to a shaded area where elders gathered. They sat in a loose circle, leaving space for both the chief and the rancher. The chief took his place and motioned for the rancher to sit as well. That small gesture eased some tension. Being invited to sit meant being heard. One of the elders spoke first. His voice was quiet but firm. He asked about the moment the rancher found the girl. Another elder asked how he knew what to do. Each question came slowly, carefully. This was not an interrogation. It was a search for truth. The rancher answered each question honestly. He described the weather, the land, the condition the girl was in. He explained how he kept her warm and why he waited at the boundary instead of driving deeper into tribal land. He admitted his fear of being misunderstood, but also said he could not leave a child in danger. As he spoke, the elders listened closely. They exchanged looks, not of suspicion, but of understanding. Many of them were parents and grandparents. They knew what it meant to fear for a child's life. The chief then spoke again. He shared what those hours had been like for him. The fear when his daughter did not return, the frantic search, the relief mixed with pain when she was found alive. His voice did not break, but the emotion was clear. He looked directly at the rancher and acknowledged that without his actions, the outcome could have been very different. A heavy silence followed. It was not uncomfortable, but meaningful. Everyone present understood that something important was happening. This was not just about one event. It was about trust, history, and the future. Some elders spoke about old wounds between communities. They spoke of times when fear ruled decisions and caused harm. Others spoke about the importance of recognizing good actions, even when they come from unexpected places. The rancher listened without interrupting. He did not agree or disagree aloud. He understood that this discussion was not about him alone, but about the tribe's values. After a long while, the chief stood. When he did, the elders fell silent. He looked at his people, then at the rancher. He said that saving a life creates a bond stronger than words. He said that courage should be honored, no matter where it comes from. He said that his daughter would live and that truth could not be ignored. He then turned to the rancher and thanked him, not with grand gestures but with sincerity. The rancher felt something loosen inside his chest. He nodded, humbled, unsure what to say. The chief did not make a final decision that day. Instead, he asked the rancher to return home and wait. He explained that such matters required reflection. The rancher accepted this without complaint. He stood, thanked the elders, and left quietly. As he walked back across the land, the sky was clear again. Birds moved freely and the wind was gentle. Yet inside him, everything felt changed. He did not know what would happen next, but he knew that a door had opened, one that had been closed for a very long time. Back at his ranch, the rancher sat alone that evening, staring at the fire. He thought about the girl, the chief, and the faces of the elders. He understood now that the real test was not the rescue, but what followed after. And somewhere across the land, the chief sat with his daughter, listening to her breathe, knowing that the path ahead, for both their worlds, was no longer the same. Days passed after the rancher left the tribal land, but the memory of that meeting stayed alive in everyone's mind. The land returned to its quiet rhythm, yet something beneath the surface had shifted. The wind still moved across the plains, the sun still rose and set, but trust, something rare and fragile, was slowly taking shape. At the ranch, the man returned to his daily work. He repaired fences, tended to his animals, and walked the familiar paths of his land. From the outside, his life looked unchanged. But inside, his thoughts often wandered back to the chief's words and the elders' faces. He wondered how the girl was doing. He hoped she was healing well. He also wondered if he would ever hear from the tribe again. The rancher did not talk about what happened. He did not seek praise or attention. To him, helping the girl was not a heroic act. It was simply the right thing to do. Still, he felt the weight of waiting. Each day carried a quiet question: what comes next? Across the land within the Apache community, the chief spent long hours in reflection. He watched over his daughter as she slowly regained her strength. Her leg was healing and her spirit was returning. She spoke of the man who carried her through the storm, of his calm voice and gentle hands. She said she did not feel afraid once she knew someone had come. The chief listened carefully. Each word his daughter spoke added another layer to his understanding. Gratitude filled his heart, but so did responsibility. As a leader, every decision he made would guide his people. He knew this moment was larger than a single act of kindness. It was a chance to set an example. The elders gathered again, this time without the rancher present. They spoke openly, sharing thoughts that had grown since their last meeting. Some believed the rancher's actions showed true respect for life. Others reminded the group of the past, urging caution. The chief allowed every voice to be heard. When the discussion ended, the chief rose and spoke with quiet strength. He said that honoring courage did not weaken tradition, it strengthened it. He said that teaching the younger generation to recognize good intentions was as important as protecting their heritage. His words settled over the group like steady rain. A decision was made. The next morning, a small group prepared to travel to the ranch. The chief would go himself. This was not a message to send through others. It was a matter of honor that required his presence. At the ranch, the man was mending a gate when he saw riders approaching in the distance. His heart tightened, not with fear but with anticipation. He set down his tools and waited, standing openly as they came closer. The chief dismounted and walked forward alone. The rancher stepped toward him, respectful and calm. The air felt still, as if the land itself was watching once more. The chief spoke first. He told the rancher that his daughter was healing well and would soon walk freely again. Relief washed over the rancher's face. The chief noticed this and nodded. Then the chief did something unexpected. He thanked the rancher again, this time in front of others, acknowledging the courage and care he had shown. He explained that saving a life creates a bond that cannot be ignored. The chief then extended an invitation. He said the rancher was welcome among the Apache people, not as a stranger but as an honored friend. He invited him to visit the tribe to share food, stories, and time. This was not an offer made lightly. It was a sign of deep respect. The rancher was surprised. He had not expected this. For a moment he struggled to find words. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but full of emotion. He said he was grateful and honored. He said he would accept the invitation with respect. The chief nodded, satisfied. There was no need for grand ceremony that day. The meaning was already clear. In the days that followed, the rancher visited the tribal land. He came quietly as a guest, not as someone seeking attention. He was welcomed with nods, careful smiles, and open gestures. Children watched him with curiosity. Elders observed him thoughtfully. He shared simple meals, listened to stories, and learned about traditions he had only known from a distance before. He did not pretend to understand everything. He listened more than he spoke. The tribe, in turn, learned about the rancher's life. They saw his respect for the land mirrored their own. Slowly, walls that had stood for years began to lower. The rancher understood that this invitation was not just about him. It was about what his actions represented. It was about choosing trust over fear. As the sun set one evening over the shared land, the rancher realized something important. He had crossed into a new chapter of his life, not by force, not by words, but by a single act of compassion that grew into something far greater. And the bond between two worlds, once distant, was now taking root, quietly, firmly, and with hope. The days that followed slowly shaped a new normal, one that neither the rancher nor the tribe had imagined before. The land did not change its shape, but the way people moved across it did. What once felt like a quiet border now felt like shared ground. The rancher continued his visits, never arriving with expectations. Each time he came with respect. Sometimes he brought simple supplies. Other times he came only with time and listening ears. He learned when to speak and when silence was better. The tribe noticed this. Trust does not grow from words alone, it grows from consistency. The chief watched closely. He observed how the rancher treated elders, how he listened to stories without interrupting, and how he greeted children gently. He saw no pride in the man's actions, only sincerity. This mattered deeply. The chief's daughter healed fully. One morning she walked across the ground on her own, steady and smiling. The tribe gathered quietly to witness it. The chief stood nearby, his eyes filled with gratitude. When the girl reached the rancher, she smiled shyly and thanked him. He knelt to her level and told her how brave she had been. That moment stayed with everyone who saw it. As seasons changed, cooperation grew naturally. When the tribe needed help repairing a structure after strong winds, the rancher came without being asked. When the rancher faced trouble with livestock during a dry spell, Members of the tribe shared water knowledge passed down for generations. These actions were not agreements written on paper. They were promises written through behavior. Stories began to change. Children on both sides grew up hearing not only about the past, but about the moment when one choice altered many lives. Elders spoke of the storm, the rescue, and the decision to honor courage instead of fear. These stories carried lessons of responsibility and humanity. The rancher never considered himself a hero. When asked why he did what he did, his answer remained simple. He said that if anyone hears a call for help and turns away, the land remembers. But if someone answers that call, the land remembers that too. The chief, in quiet moments, reflected on leadership. He understood that true strength did not come from closing doors, but from knowing when to open them. By honoring the rancher, he had not weakened his people. He had strengthened their values. Years passed. The rancher grew older, his steps slower but his spirit steady. He was no longer seen as someone from outside. He was seen as a man who had earned trust through action. When gatherings took place, his presence felt natural, not symbolic. The land itself seemed to respond. Where tension once lingered, calm now lived. Where distance once ruled, understanding grew. One evening, as the sun lowered and painted the sky in warm colors, the rancher stood beside the chief, both men silent, watching the horizon. They did not need words. The journey they shared spoke for itself. What began as a single moment in a storm became a lasting bond. A life saved became many lives changed. And long after both men were gone, the story remained, passed down not as a tale of division but as proof that one act of courage, done without expectation, can reshape the future. The land remembered, and so did the people.